It is 4:04, and I'd like to call this special meeting of the Bay County Board of Commissioners to order. Roll call.
Krieger.
Yes.
Begit.
Here.
Coonan.
Excused?
Herrick.
Here.
Ryder.
Here.
Lutz.
Here.
Durancheck.
Here.
Everyone present.
Please stand for invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Eternal Father, you have placed in us a world of space and time. Through the events in our lives, you bless us with your love. Lord, we ask that you will grant to this Board of Commissioners and all those in authority patience and understanding to work together for the good of all people. In your holy name we ask this. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, citizen input. These citizens would like to come forward, state your name. We already know you, Wanda, but just for the record.
For the record, my name is Wanda Beamlander Rao. I represent the United Steelworkers 15157 paraprofessionals and the part-time, full-time, and oversee the probation over at the courts. I would like to thank the board for putting forth the finances to conduct this important study. I do also look forward to, I understand you're not going to accept it. I understand we're going into bargaining, but I am also very thankful that you have done this and allow us an opportunity to see how the workforce should grow or could grow in the future. And I look forward to working with Tiffany and the bargaining team on management side to make sure that if you guys choose to implement parts of this, that we are also being proactive to make sure it doesn't, without lack of better words, break the bank. So that's all I want to say. And again, thank you very much for putting the funds forward to go ahead and get this study done. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda, for your comments. Anyone else? At this time, just a brief explanation for people. This is something that's new to me, new to a lot of the commissioners. This presentation today is just on how did we get released shortly to everyone, but this does not have anything to do with, as far as wages or increases or steps or anything like that. That's something that's going to be taken care of in negotiations. At this time, I'd like to introduce Ruth Ann Elledge. I say that wrong? I did.
No, that was perfect.
Yeah, good, thank you. She is Vice President and Senior Consultant for Segal Waters Consulting. This is the firm that did our study. Data has been collected as November of 2018, so it can't get much more recent than that. This is something that's been worked on for over a year. So at this time, Ruth Ann, thank you.
Tiffany, did you want to have any comments, Tiffany, before we get started?
No, I think the chair represented it well. That we'll be going over the methodology, but not the details. Behind it, the official report will be released at one time to everybody at the same time, so everybody receives it at once. I do want to just take a real quick second to think there are two teams. There's a project team and a leadership team, and the project team is made up of several different people within the personnel department, but they work very hard and a lot of hours. They dedicated a lot of time and effort to this project, and it wouldn't have come to its conclusion without their work. So I just wanted to we'll go through the names a little bit on the presentation, but I wanted to make a note of how hard and how much time they did put into this. So.
Did everyone, can you hear that okay? I got a couple of no's out there. Maybe get a little closer up here and, all right, go ahead, Ruth Ann.
Okay, thank You won't bite, huh? Okay. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about and give you the kind of an overview of the study. And I want to echo what Tiffany just said. This has been a very extensive study, and it's taken a lot of work, and it's a partnership. It's something that Segal has worked very closely with Tiffany and the project team, as well as with the leadership team that have worked with us hand in hand along the way to make sure that we have a deliverable that is something that will be useful for you and relevant for you as you begin your consideration of it. I have put together a presentation to walk you through not only who that project team was, who the leadership team was composed of, and then step you through the different components of the study and coming together with some kind of what-if scenario kind of thing. So just to tag on to what Tiffany said earlier, we had a project team which included Tiffany, excuse me, Rebecca, Becky, Tracy, and Michelle, and they were all hard workers that worked with us along the way to make sure that we had the information we needed to be able to do our analysis, and that they looked at the results and the findings as we went along, so that if there were any questions, we were able to get those answered. We also had a leadership team because we wanted to have input from folks within the organization. And so we had those that were elected, those that represented, key departments, and it couldn't be everybody. So we were trying to put in those that we felt like could help us and had the time to do that and were available to assist us. And so between these two teams, we had the day-to-day kind of work with us, and then the oversight, so that when we came to some key directions and options, we had that leadership team to give us feedback and direction. I want to begin this presentation by talking about objectives that we're trying to accomplish. We were tasked with coming up with a system that would help the county administer pay. And that should be a system that is consistent with how you are structured. It should be consistent that follows your management style, your culture, how the organization typically wants to handle compensation. It should provide an internal equity among positions, so that if you look at jobs and see how they are placed into a pay system, you can understand the internal and relationships of jobs. It also needs to have an external competitive component, which is how positions and how your pay system compares to the external market. It should also be one that you can understand and explain, and people understand what it means to them, and that that can continue to be managed over time, so that as the organization changes, as your jobs change, as your philosophy changes, you may restructure. This system can be continued to be managed by human resources and by you as an organization. It has to have that fiscal constraint to it, so that it is provides you with the affordability component. And then again, trying to have something that's efficient and easy to administer, something that isn't a tremendous burden on you as an organization or on HR or payroll or everybody else to continue to manage. So with these key objectives in mind, we worked through a flow of phases that you'll see here on the chart. Our first step, of course, was to meet with you to gather information about the county, make sure we're clear about the goals and objectives of the study, roles and responsibilities, setting up the teams that were going to support the study. And then very quickly after that, we moved into the job analysis phase of the study. It's very important that you know what work is being performed when you start a compensation study. And the first step is to understand through collection of data what jobs are being performed. As we gather that information, updated job descriptions, have made some suggestions about maybe even some titling changes that might better match the work that's being made. We've moved into what we call a job evaluation process, which looks at the internal relationships of jobs, as well as went out to the market to try to collect information from other employers to see what they are paying for similar types of work. That then moved into a component where we actually prepared a compensation structure for your consideration, and then, of course, guidelines on how to continue to administer it. So these are the key steps of the project, all with lots of interaction and communication. As a result of the study, there are key deliverables, which includes the job analysis, and all of this becomes yours. The job questionnaires that were collected, the documentation of the work that was being performed, the review of the exemption status for some jobs to make sure that they were correctly either exempted for overtime or eligible for overtime. That's the Fair Labor Standards Review. We did a formal process called job evaluation to look at the internal relationships of jobs, the similarities and the differences, and I'll go into more detail about what that is in a few moments. We did conduct a very extensive compensation survey that was documented and sent out to collect salary, benefits, and pay practices data. We then compared the information we collected through this survey process to the county and have provided an updated compensation plan and some options for implementation. It's all put together into a final report that you will see, that documents the methodology and findings, and then, of course, we have the on-site presentation of that report today. I'm going to step through each of the components of the study and talk about each one individually. When we talk about job analysis, we're looking at what are jobs, what are positions doing, what are they responsible for, what are the key characteristics of the position. And so that process included having employees fill out job questionnaires. We looked at the work being performed. We have some recommendations on maybe some job changes, some job restructuring, and also some options for you for some different titling. One of the things we try to do in this stage of the process is try to use consistent titling, so that if you call something an analyst or an assistant or a specialist or that kind of thing, it means something. And then, of course, updated job descriptions so that we have recommended that these be used for consideration because they accurately reflect what employees are doing because they completed a questionnaire on the work that they were performing. Once we had documented the work that was being performed, then we went through a process called point factor job evaluation. And this process really is a system, and it looks at key characteristics of positions to look at the internal relationships of jobs. And it coexists with market because when you do a market survey, you can't get market data on every position. With the number of jobs you have and the number of positions you have, you'll not be able to get market data because some of them are very unique. Some of them are different, and not every employer has those jobs. So if you understand what the relationship is between jobs, what the internal relationships is, then when you bring in market data for jobs, you can match them to other positions that were not part of that survey process. And it helps us understand those relationships when you go through what we call a point factor job evaluation. Once we had completed the job analysis and the job documentation, we completed the market review. We were interested in finding out what other employers pay for similar types of work, not only in direct pay, but other benefits. And so we talked about who was it that was your market, who should be surveyed. And we spent quite a bit of time with that, with the leadership team, getting lots of input, looking at who do we think has similar types of jobs, who do you compete with, who has similar types of budgets, who has similar types of services. And we identified 12 peer employers that we felt would provide us what we call relevant data, information that we can use to determine how we want to apply that to your positions. In addition to those 12 peer employers that received the custom survey, we also brought in private published sector data from 3 different sources. And you can see on this slide the actual peer employers that we asked to participate in the survey, and that we also used published private sector data from Economic Research Institute, IBM Connexa Comp Analyst, and Willis Towers Water Data Services Comp Services. So that was our source of information for all of the data. We had 2 peers that we asked to participate that one didn't have the staffing to be able to respond to the survey, so we completed the survey on their behalf. and that was Midland County. And then we had one peer, Lapeer, that did not participate. Were not able to provide us any data at all. But we did have data from 11 peers, as well as those 3 sources of published private sector data. I wanted to make a note that when you collect data outside of your immediate region, there's a lot of reasons why employers pay for types of positions or types of work. And so there is differences in what we call cost of labor. So what one organization in another region pays for the same job in your region may vary based on what we call cost of labor. Economic Research Institute establishes a national index for cost of labor and then applies it to each one of the locations that we gathered data from. If they had a higher cost of labor, the cost of labor is considered, the national index is at 100. So if you look at the individual factor, the individual index that is applied to each location, which is the county seat, you can adjust their data up or down based on differences in cost of labor. So you can see here in this slide that for Bay County, which is Bay City, their relationship to the national index is 96.5, so it's less than the overall national average. And you can see that most of them are less than the national average, maybe not quite as much as Bay County, but each location was evaluated and the actual data collected from their location has been adjusted up or down based on that cost of labor, that economic index that was established by Economic Research Institute. What we found when we gathered all the data, and this is the broad, big picture, is if you look at, we collected data on 100 benchmark jobs. When you prepare a survey, there's only such a size of a survey that other peers will respond to. And I guess if you ask Tiffany, she'll tell you 100 is probably the magic word, and magic number, and it really is. If you have a survey with 100 positions, you're likely to get other employers to provide you with data. And we had 100 jobs in our survey. If you take the average of the minimum of those individual positions, and you compare it to the average of all of the other peer employers, you are right about average of what they're doing. They're 99% of their average for range minimum for the entry tier positions. If you look at the maximum, the top pay for those jobs on average compared to your top pay on average, you're lagging at 86%. So you're about 14% lower than their top pay. If you look at the middle, which we often refer to that as the market-sensitive piece of the pay structure, the pay range, you're at 92% overall of what the middle or the midpoint of their pay ranges are, and that's about 8% behind market. So you're at market at the minimums and lagging at the midpoints and the maximums. Of course, it varies by job. And so as you can see, of those 100 benchmark jobs, about half of them were lagging market, and about half of them were at or above market. You had 20 jobs that we require 5 matches for analysis, and while we did get matches for them, we feel like it's insufficient data until you achieve those 5 matches. So we report that data, and it's included in your study, but it isn't used in the overall analysis for structure recommendations. So employee pay is not the only thing we looked at as part of this review. We wanted to look at other benefits, and one of them was market your paid leave. And what we did is we took all of your paid leave, which included holidays and vacation and sick and so forth, and added all that up. And so you can see it does, of course, accrue differently at different times of tenure. So at year 1, you are leading. In fact, as you continue to move up to 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, and 25 years, in each of one of those cases, you have a more generous leave program than what your peer employers do. If you look at health benefits and look at what the employer cost or the employer pay is, you'll see that actually you, for the same type of PPO plan that others are providing, your costs are less, and that's a good thing. Yours are at a little less than 1,000, and your market average is a little over 1,000. So you're in pretty good shape there as well. And one of the things we also looked at is the cost sharing of those premiums. What we found is that Bay County pays a little bit less of the total employee premium, the total premium for the plan. So you'll see that employees for the medical plan for Bay County, you're paying 86% of the premium, where other employers are paying 91%. Employee and spouse, you're paying 86% of the premium, and the others are paying 91%, and then for employee and family coverage, you're paying 86% of the premium, and the other peer employees are paying 91%. So you're sharing more of the cost for the medical premium, although the premiums are lower because the total cost is lower. And finally, if you look at retirement contributions, again, Bay County, we split it between the general positions, and then, of course, the Sheriff's Department has a different retirement contribution. But your annual employee retirement contribution, which is a percent of pay, is for general employees is a little less than 18%, and it's right at, for general employees, the market average. Of course, sheriff is a little bit more, but we only collected from these others the actual average payment. So it's difficult to compare sheriff's positions to actual sheriff's positions. In the defined benefit contributions, you can see that for general positions, the average is 6.31%, the market average is 7.29%, sheriff is 9.91%, and then, of course, the annual employee contributions as a percent of pay for defined benefit is 4%, and for market average is 4.75%. So you're right around in where the market is paying in terms of retirement contributions. So one of the things we were asked to do was to develop a compensation system. And of course, this is if you were going to take all this data, if you were going to accept it, and if you were going to make the same assumptions that we did, we have drafted some structures for your consideration that are at 95% of market. The reason why we did that is because other benefits are very strong. You have a very generous offering for leave, you're competitive with your retirement, you're doing well with your medical, and so we felt like if you're within that plus or minus 5% is what we call market corridor, that you'll be competitive. So what we did was draft 2 structures for your general positions, and we split them in between exempt and non-exempt, or your hourly, which are non-exempt, and your salaried, which are exempt. And we have 16 grades and these structures, and they have spreads. So this is for your consideration if you're going to think about this when you're beginning to develop one structure to administer pay off of. We also developed a separate structure for public safety, and we looked at each rank and compared it to the market average minimum at 95% to identify what was the entry, and then we added steps to match the market average maximum. So as a result of this, we analyzed employees in the current structures and have placed employees. We did put in steps, but we placed them into those ranges and would place each employee on the separate step. Because you had asked us, give us an idea of what it would cost to do something like this if you were to look at this and decide you were going to do it. This is a copy of the non-exempt structure. You can see that it has levels and ranges from an entry to a maximum. And this is your hourly. Your exempt structure would be salaried, and you can see it has levels and ranges as well. And again, public safety would look at each rank and place each rank at the entry based on the market average entry. If you were to do something like this and move in, this is just to get you into this structure. This would not be long-term cost. But if you were to do something like this, it would cost you about $225,000, assuming all of these assumptions that we have made to build structures at 95% and to put them on closest step. You can see the majority of your employees would already be within the range of pay. There's only a few employees that would have to be moved up. The way this analysis is done is looking at each one of the groups of employees from exempt, non-exempt, part-time, and public safety, and identifying if there's any employees that are below the entry. And you can see for the exempt, there would be 4 employees. There'd be 4 employees in non-exempt, none in part-time, and 7 in public safety that would need to be brought up to entry. And then if you assume that there are steps within that pay structure, then here's the number of employees that would have to be moved to a closest step. Nobody loses money out of this. It's all moved up to the next step that's closest to their current rate of pay. And there would be 89 exempt positions, 171 non-exempt, 21 part-time, and 50 public safety. So overall, the 331 employees would receive a movement to step. And the overall cost is about 1.1% of your current payroll. Any questions, excuse me, about what I presented so far? Yes, sir.
The healthcare one, we have a wellness clinic, and I don't know about the other counties that were surveyed, if that's a factor, that our costs are lower.
We took that into consideration. You couldn't quantify it, but we took it into consideration as part of the total richness of the benefits package, because that is a valuable resource that is provided to your employees. So it wasn't calculated in the total value, but it was an influencer in deciding where you needed to be in relationship to market. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Krieger.
And so, if we were to make these changes, again, what was the total increase that you
About
proposed?
$225,000.
Thank you.
And this is just to get you in, kind of get you the first step. This would be step 1. The first phase, I should say, maybe. That's a better way to say it.
Commissioner Harry.
You talked about the low level where we're at 99% at the lowest level, then went down to 92, and then 86. What's the median? What was the median range in there? You know, like what was the median percentage? I mean, it's 99% of what?
So the good question. So if you take all 100 jobs and you look at the entry of your 100 jobs on average and the entry of all the employers that match that, and you compared their average entry, that's what you're doing, is you're doing it's what I call the big picture. If you looked, let's just say you took all of your structures and kind of put them all together as one, and you took all the data you had and put it all together as one, and you took the difference between that and your structure, your entries are pretty close to what others are starting employees. But as you progress into the middle of the range, you start to lose competitiveness, and top step is where you are also most lagging in competitiveness. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you for that very much.
Thank you.
Tiffany, do you have any comments or anything to add or at this time?
I don't have anything. I think
All right, very good.
everybody is aware that everything has to be negotiated. This is all just information at this point. What that is going to happen with that information is undecided and won't be decided today. So just for the audience to know that this is not a decision-making board meeting.
Yep. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to receive the study from Segal Waters.
So moved.
Support.
We have motion support. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Move on to unfinished business. None. New business. None. Miscellaneous. Announcements. Mr. Commissioner Krieger, now's your time. The race.
June 29th, Beach Wellness, 9 o'clock. Hopefully everybody will take advantage of the beauty that we have with the course that we have at the Bay City State Park, and looking forward to good weather, seeing that we have no spring. We'll have summer come June 29th. Thank you.
June 14th and 15th, Cheestown Challenge Parade, festivities in Pink County, nice fireworks. The tribe up our way is chipped in, so it should be nothing that's going to be in the comparison of Bay City, but for Pink County, it was a nice show last year, and it'll be a good one this year. Any other announcements? Closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's my understanding the board requests a closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268 subsection C for strategy and negotiation sessions connected with negotiation of collective bargaining agreements.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Ryder is our first roll call. Lutz?
Yes.
Krieger?
Yes.
Big Ick?
Yes.
Conan?
Excused?
Hughes? Eric?
Yes.
And Durencheck.
Yes.
6 yeas.
Thank you. We are in closed session. Secure.